So the Houston market is no longer in that frenzy of buying where you had to overpay for everything and couldn't get any incentives. Right now, our listings are up over 40% and our first quarter sales have all dropped in price. So it is a great time to be a buyer in this market. Today, I'm going to go through the 7 trends happening in the city of Houston, and I think you are going to be surprised at what I have to share with you. So I'm Natasha Tessier. I was born and raised in this great city of Houston, pretty much been here my whole life, and I love this city, everything about it. I'm actually top 1% agent in the entire city of Houston. And for 2024, I won the solo agent for Texas. What does that mean, solo agent? So there are a lot of YouTubers out there. Some of them are moving here and they're not licensed in the state of Texas. Others of them have 47 people on their team. So unless you're a luxury buyer, you're not going to talk to the person behind the screen. However, I am a solo agent. I have a few girls that help me with paperwork and with showings, but really I am the one working behind the scenes. I'm going to be the one negotiating, running inspections, and doing all that with you. So just keep that in mind as you're looking for an agent. Number 1 is going to be that the Houston housing market has shifted. We are no longer in a seller's market. So if you bought in 2022 here, people were paying crazy amounts over asking costs. There were bidding wars. You could not ask for help on anything, and that is almost a 180 shift to where we are today. So in 2025, right now, it is picking up. I've listed a few recently, and they are going under contract quickly. Our inventory is up almost 39%. It is the highest inventory we've had since 2011. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's supply and demand. So our supply is high. That means our demand is low. That means prices are going to go down. So it's simple supply and demand. Right now, we have a very high supply. So in a healthy market, you want to be around the 3 to 4 month of supply, meaning if we sold everything on the market, it would take us 3 to 4 months. Right now, we're approaching 5 to 6 months worth of inventory, meaning if we sold everything we had right now, it would take us 6 months to do that. So we are definitely in a buyer's market at this point. The average days on market is up over 60. It was at 40. Now we're pushing 60 days on the market, which means it's sitting at least 2 months. Again, that all depends on how they're being priced, who's listing it, and what kind of marketing they're doing. But a lot of the inventory is sitting right now. So the buyers are negotiating closing costs, price drops, all sorts of things. If a house has been sitting, we're not going to pay full price for that. So if you're in there looking at Zillow or har.com and you see a house that you love, it's been on the market 30 days, just know I'm not going to pay asking price, especially with new builds. I have a lot of clients that make the mistake that don't go in with an agent on new builds, and I am able to negotiate always on those new builds. I'm doing one right now, and they've come back to me 3 times, and I've said no 3 times. We will get them the price that they want because I know they don't have another buyer sitting there. So the other thing is suburbs like Katy and Cypress, their inventory has surged up to 50-55%. So those markets are really flat right now because there's so much inventory. And in the first quarter, something else to mention is 58% of homes sold less than their listing price. So almost 60% aren't even going for asking price. That's pretty high. The second thing is construction costs are still high. So our lumber is still high, although it's come down, it's still high. It's up 23% year over year. So that makes it difficult to build. And so what these builders have done is they built a lot of inventory homes and they're sitting there because the supply is too high, especially if you want the best deal. You're going to go in for a new construction home and it's going to be built. You're not going to be able to pick out everything. It's going to be built, but you will be able to get in the lowest price per square foot. So in 5 years, when you want to sell that, you already have instant equity. I have a client building a Westin out in Woodland Hills, and we just got our appraisal back and it's $20,000 higher than what we paid for the house. So they're walking into $20,000 worth of equity in their house before they move in. That's the kind of deals we're able to get right now. Again, the builders are doing things like a 3-2-1 buy down. So that means the first year your interest rate might be 2.99, then 3.99, then 4.99. However, if those rates ever drop below that, you can always refinance. So you're getting good rates at the beginning, which is really helping a lot of buyers get into the market. The next thing is the political moves and migration. It still is keeping Houston very strong. You're not going to believe this, but we had 198,000 people move to the Houston area last year. That is the second most in the US. It is a very popular place. Like I said, the political climate change, tons of people from California and New York are constantly moving here, trying to find a better way for them and their families with all the change happening in our country. And I'm not going to go into that, but you know what I'm referencing. So the economy is still good here. There's still a lot of job opportunity, especially with all the growth. So we have a lot of that going on. However, there's still a lot of inventory for those people to choose from. The other thing I want to mention is a lot of people freak out over property taxes. So you can get a low property tax in an older neighborhood, 1.2, 1.5%. However, in our new construction, you are going to be at 3%. I've talked about this before. You do not have a state income tax. So if you're living in a state where it's 10% and you're making $100,000, you're going to pay 10 grand plus your 1% in property tax. Here, you're not going to pay the state income tax, but you are going to pay property tax. However, we do have a $100,000 homestead exemption that was just implemented, which means that the value of the home that you're paying on, you'll pay $100 less. So if your house is at $500, it's going to go down to $400 for the majority of the bill, which is your school portion. And then if you're over 65, it went up to $110,000 as your exemption. The next thing I want to talk about is just, I mentioned this earlier, the economy is kind of mixed here. Only 40% of households right now can afford the median income of home prices, which means 40% of the people can afford the average home because the rates are so high, which is why that new construction inventory is always a good one to look at, because they're buying down rates ahead of time, and then you're able to get in and afford it even more. However, we do have a pretty strong economy. It's steady. You know, we've got our oil and gas, especially with all the pipelines and things being re-implemented. That is looking on the uprise, but there are a few layoffs in certain companies. So the other thing I want to mention is that our rentals are way up. So if you're an investor, this might be a great time to invest because you can get a great deal on a property, but the rental demand is going up because people can't afford to purchase right now. So if you're an investor, this might be a great time. I've actually helped a ton of families with short-term rentals on Lake Conroe that are doing really, really well. I have another agent that runs all of those short-term rentals for them and helps them set them up. I just had somebody from out of state do that with a second home investment. So that's another option because you can get good prices and negotiate things and then get it on the short-term rental, which does really well at Lake Conroe area. My next key point is that smart buyers are getting serious wins right now. 44% across the nation, and Houston is right there with that number. I would say it's almost over 50% are able to get some sort of incentive to get the house more affordable. So take advantage of that if you are a buyer. Obviously, you know, back in 22, we didn't have option periods. People were just taking the house as is. All that is gone. You have an option period. You have time to check it out, negotiate repairs. Again, negotiate anything that you want to make that home more affordable for you. Again, it is a great time to get out there and be a buyer because you have full control over what's happening. Whereas 3 years ago, we did not have that. We just had to take what we could get and overpay for everything. Number 6 is pricing is flat. Certain cracks are appearing here and there. The pricing is not going up. It's not going down. It's kind of in the middle. However, there are a few areas where the inventory is so high, like Cypress and Katy, that those prices are starting to take a dip. I actually have a house listed in Hockley right now. It's only a year old, and the new construction is worth less than she paid for it because they've had to have dropped their prices because the supply was too much. So again, I always tell my buyers, if you're going to buy a new construction home, you need to plan on being there for at least 5 years. This particular family had to move, so they didn't have a choice, and we're doing everything we can to get that sold for them. But you don't want to buy and try to sell again in a year. So if you're looking at new construction, please be prepared to be there for 5 years before you call me and say, hey, Natasha, can you sell this house for me? If you're there 5 to 10 years, like if you started in Wood Forest 10 years ago, you have a ton of equity in your home. But if you are, a year into it, it's going to be a difficult one. So right now, I didn't mention this, but our median home price is around $325. And again, that's staying steady. Normally it's like a 3 to 5% increase over time. In the 22 era, it went up by 20%. Everybody's prices went up, but now it's kind of staying steady right now, if not dropping. So that's something to think about. And a lot of times you don't see the impact of that till 3 to 6 months later. So I think the reason our spring is so bad is, 3 to 6 months ago, we were in the middle of the election, new year, lots of uncertainty. And then with all the tariffs, of course, people are a little bit hesitant right now, but it is picking back up. Things are starting to move better than they were 6 months ago, and I think it will get better. However, there are still great deals out there happening. The last thing I'm going to mention is that it's zip code specific. So as I mentioned, areas like Conroe, Katy, Cypress, Pearland, their inventory surged the most out of anybody. So if your inventory is surging, of course, your prices are going to drop. However, some areas like the Heights and the Woodlands and those kind of places, they're holding steady and even going up by 1 or 2%. So it is zip code specific. And this is where it's really important to have an agent who knows the area. If you're looking at your experience of the agent that you're thinking of hiring, search their name with HAR behind it, go on there, and there's a map and it'll show you how many homes they've sold and in what areas. I've sold over 300 homes in the area, but there are other agents that you might meet on social media or, cold calling or whatever, and they sold 2 homes. You want to be cautious with that because they aren't going to have the level of experience to really negotiate on your behalf. And I think if you talk to all my sellers, I think my negotiating skills would be their number one reason for hiring me. I am very sweet and get it done, but I don't like my clients to get taken advantage of. So I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Like I said, builder I've been working with 2 weeks. They came back last night and they said, oh, we can do this house for $430,000 at this new neighborhood out in Montgomery. And I'm like, no, you gave us that offer 2 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. They keep coming back to us, which tells me that they have wiggle room. I've had 2 builders in the past 2 weeks come back to us and say, hey, we can drop it again. We can drop it again. Even though I'm offering them less than they initially even told the client. I always tell my clients, if you go into new construction, don't talk to them about pricing. Let me do that. Just say, oh, okay, thank you. And then, tell me what they shared with you, and then let's dig a little bit deeper and see how low we can get it. Okay, so what does this mean for you, as a buyer, a seller, an investor in the Houston market? It means really great things. So as a buyer, this is a great time to get in, to get a great deal on a home, to get the seller to pay your buy down rate, to get the builder to pay for your closing costs, whatever that may be. It is a great time to make deals happen in this market. If you're one of those that's been waiting, this is a good spot. They're also predicting that the interest rates will go down. Now, if these interest rates that are 6.5, 6.75 go down into the 5s, all these great deals are going to go away because all those people that have been sitting there waiting are going to come back and be ready to buy. So I think we'll have a shift in the market. I wouldn't wait for that to happen. If it were me, I would lock in a higher rate, and in 6 months, if it goes down, 1.5%, just refinance it. Because think about that. If you have a house worth $40,000 more than you bought it for, and you just pay the high interest rate for 6 months, you're going to be way ahead in the long run. If you are a seller in this market, it is imperative that you know how many solds your realtor has, what kind of marketing they're going to do. Do they have a great marketing plan? Do they have a YouTube channel? Are they on social media? How are they marketing your home? If they're just getting pictures and putting a sign in the yard, you're going to struggle in this market to get the best price. And then as an investor, like I said before, I'm working with a lot of people buying short-term rentals right now all over the lake, as well as long-term rentals and people who, there's traveling nurses. I've got all sorts of clients who are investing right now at lower rates and lower pricing so that they can get those locked in, again, have equity in the home, and then the rental prices are up and spiking because there's so many renters because they can't afford the homes. So investors, this is a great time for you as well. Okay, so bottom line is, in this shifting market, it is important that you have an agent that knows the areas, knows the inventory, and knows what kind of deals they can provide for you. Every time somebody comes to me with a house, I'm going to run the numbers and I'm going to say, oh, I think this is the best deal we can get, and we're going to push for that deal. So make sure you have an agent who is experienced from the area and knows the market and how it shifts, and how Katy's market can be completely different from the Woodlands market. That is why working with somebody who is a great negotiator, can do all these things on your behalf, is important. If you are looking to buy or sell in the Houston area, I would love to be of service to you. You can reach out at the number below anytime you'd like, days, nights, weekends. I'm always happy to help you, and I hope you have a blessed day.